dare you own more than one car? That's a felony.
Is it?
What section of the
Penal code is that in, Karen?
Tow this vehicle out of here right now. The owner violated HOA policies. This ends today.
I moved into the HOA thinking peace was automatic when lawns were trimmed and mailboxes matched. I was wrong by day 3. Whispers followed me like mosquitoes, warning me about the president. They said Karen ran meetings like interrogations and smiled only when someone paid a fine. I didn't believe them. I believed rules had limits and adults had sense. That fantasy lasted exactly one driveway conversation. Make sure you like and subscribe for your top-notch HOA drama. My name is Daniel Crawford. I'm 34 years old, work in software development, and my only real hobby outside coding is cars. Not racing them, not showing them off, just collecting, restoring, and enjoying them on weekends. I'm a quiet guy. I keep to myself. I pay my bills on time. I thought that would be enough. It wasn't. At the first HOA meeting I attended, Karen sat at the head table like a judge auditioning for television. Tight blazer, clipboard clutched like a weapon, eyes scanning for sinners. I introduced myself politely, nodded, and planned to disappear. That plan collapsed the moment she noticed my keys. 3 different car fobs clinked together on my key ring. Toyota, Honda, Ford. Nothing exotic, nothing flashy. Just 3 reliable vehicles I'd collected over the years. Her smile twitched. I felt it then. The moment a predator spots movement, I was new, quiet, and stupidly hopeful. Cars were my hobby, my therapy, my weekend joy. I owned 3. Nothing flashy, just parked in rotation as I used them. First week, 1 car showed up. Second month, another. Third month, the last. Each arrival felt normal to me. To Karen, it was a personal insult. She cornered me after the meeting under buzzing fluorescent lights. She said owning multiple cars was selfish. I asked how. She accused me of flaunting wealth, polluting the air, and pressuring neighbors emotionally. I actually laughed, thinking she was joking. She wasn't. Her eyes went flat. She told me harmony mattered more than my ego. I walked away, still smiling, convinced it would blow over. Instead, I noticed her watching, counting, writing. Before we dive in deeply, let us know in the comments what country or which city you're watching this story from. We'd love to know how far this story travels. Neighbors avoided eye contact after that meeting. One guy whispered, "Don't argue with her." Another said, "She picks targets." That's when it clicked. This wasn't about cars. This was about control. And apparently, I'd just volunteered. I still believed logic would save me. That if I just explained my situation calmly, showed her the bylaws, proved I wasn't breaking any rules, she'd back down. I was unaware that reason meant nothing once Karen decided my driveway was her battlefield, and my silence her invitation to relentless scrutiny. Over the next few days, I started asking around, trying to understand if this madness was normal. The stories I heard made my blood run cold. Karen had once fined a man $500 for aggressive lawn edging because his grass line was too sharp. She'd forced a family to repaint their front door 3 times because the color felt hostile. She'd driven out a retired veteran by citing him daily for his flagpole being 2 inches over regulation height. Nobody fought back. Everyone just left. 2 days after that first meeting, the letter arrived like a slap wrapped in paper. Official HOA letterhead. Bold font. Karen's signature sitting smugly at the bottom. I read it twice, then laughed once, then stopped laughing completely. According to Karen, my vehicles were actively increasing the community carbon footprint and creating psychological pressure on surrounding homeowners. She gave me exactly 7 days to remove 2 cars or face consequences. I read it again, certain I'd misunderstood. I hadn't. I pulled out the HOA bylaws, read every single page. Twice. Nowhere did it limit car ownership. Nowhere did it restrict how many vehicles a homeowner could park in their own driveway. My 3 cars weren't blocking anyone. They weren't leaking oil. They weren't abandoned rust buckets. They were just there. I knocked on a few doors, trying to understand if this was real. Reactions were split between nervous shrugs and quiet warnings. The advice I kept hearing was worse than the letter itself. Just comply, she'll ruin you otherwise. Lay low, it's not worth the fight. That advice tasted like defeat. I wasn't breaking any rule. No bylaw limited car ownership. My driveway was mine. Still, Karen escalated fast. Day 4, a warning notice for visual clutter. Day 5, a citation for environmental disregard. Day 6, a handwritten note taped to my door saying, "Last chance to be reasonable." When the deadline expired, she went nuclear. Fines appeared daily like junk mail from hell. Improper parking angles. Imaginary oil stains. Excessive driveway usage. Each one $100 to $250, no explanation, no proof, just Karen's signature and a due date. She called neighbors. She called the board. She somehow called my workplace. My boss pulled me aside, asking if I was having issues at home because someone named Karen had left 3 voicemails about my unstable behavior. I was mortified. She began inspections that somehow always landed when I wasn't home. I'd come back to find notices stuck to my garage, tire marks photographed, measurements taken of distances between my cars. I caught her one afternoon photographing my vehicles like they owed her money. Then came the threats, emails dripping with false politeness, phrases like force compliance and community action. She hinted at towing, liens, even eviction. I responded once calmly, citing the bylaws she was ignoring. Her reply was a single sentence. "We'll see." That's when I realized this wasn't harassment anymore. This was preparation. Karen wasn't bluffing. She was setting the stage, lining up witnesses, creating paperwork armor. The fines weren't the punishment. They were the justification. I started documenting everything. Every email, every notice, every photograph she took, every interaction. I installed security cameras around my property, 4 angles covering the driveway, garage, and front door. I didn't tell anyone. I just waited. Karen kept escalating. She held an emergency HOA meeting where she presented a slideshow about my cars. A slideshow with photos and charts showing excess vehicle density per household. She proposed a new rule, maximum 2 vehicles per residence. The board looked uncomfortable but didn't object. Nobody ever objected to Karen. The rule passed, effective immediately. I had 72 hours to remove 1 car or face enforcement action. I did nothing, no replies, no compliance. I parked exactly as before. I let her build her paper tower, unaware she was documenting her own downfall. The day everything snapped started like any other work day. Coffee, keys, traffic, routine. I was halfway through a meeting when my phone started buzzing. Motion alerts from my security app. 1 alert became 5, then 10. I opened the feed and my stomach dropped. Karen was in my driveway, not inspecting, not observing, directing. 2 tow trucks idled outside my house like hired muscle. I watched in real time as Karen stood there with a clipboard in one hand and her phone in the other, pacing with authority she absolutely did not have. I watched her point at my garage, argue with the tow truck driver, then march straight up to my front door. Seconds later, the camera angle shifted violently. The feed shook. Darkness! She had forced entry into my garage. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't type. I bolted out of the office without explanation. Didn't grab my jacket, didn't tell my boss, just ran. By the time I reached my street, it looked peaceful. Too peaceful. The tow trucks were gone. 2 of my cars were gone. My garage door hung crooked, metal bent, lock shattered. Neighbors peeked through blinds like witnesses who didn't want to testify. I stood there, breathing hard, fury buzzing behind my eyes. This wasn't a fine anymore. This wasn't bureaucratic harassment. This was theft, breaking and entering, criminal. And I had it all on camera. I went straight to Karen's house, rang the doorbell, knocked hard. She opened the door, smiling like a saint. I asked where my cars were. She denied everything with Olympic-level confidence, said I was confused, said maybe I'd moved them myself and forgotten. Her performance was flawless, almost believable, almost. I pulled out my phone, opened the security footage, hit play. Her voice echoed from the speaker. "Tow this vehicle out of here. The owner violated HOA policies." The color drained from her face like someone pulled a plug. She tried to backtrack, said it was a misunderstanding, said she was acting on behalf of the community. I called the police on the spot, right there on her porch. She tried to close the door. I put my foot in the way and told her she could wait with me or explain to the officers why she ran. She waited. When the police arrived, I showed them everything. The footage, the forced garage door, the missing vehicles, the paperwork trail of harassment. Karen tried to reframe it as community assistance, said she was acting for the greater good. The officers didn't smile. Under questioning, Karen cracked, admitted she'd authorized the tow, said it was necessary to enforce HOA compliance, couldn't say where the cars were taken, couldn't produce paperwork authorizing the tow, couldn't explain the forced entry. The officers exchanged looks that said this wasn't an HOA issue anymore. This was criminal. They asked if I wanted to press charges. I said yes, without hesitation. Karen's face went from confident to panicked to furious in about 30 seconds. She started yelling about how I was overreacting, how this was a civil matter, how she had authority as HOA president. The officers told her to be quiet. One of them made a call. Within 20 minutes, a detective arrived. Karen was read her rights, handcuffed, placed in the back of a patrol car. As they drove away, I saw her through the window, still trying to argue, still convinced she'd done nothing wrong. I stood there in my driveway, watching the patrol car disappear, and felt something shift. This wasn't just about my cars anymore. It took the police 4 hours to track down where the tow trucks had taken my vehicles. A private impound lot, 40 miles outside the city, the kind of place that charges by the day and doesn't ask questions. I drove out there with a police escort. What I found made my hands shake. Both cars were dumped in the back corner of the lot, like trash. Scratches along the doors, suspension damage from improper towing, one rim completely warped. The tow truck drivers hadn't used wheel dollies, hadn't secured them properly, just dragged them onto flatbeds and dumped them. The lot owner claimed he'd been told they were abandoned vehicles from an HOA cleanup. He had no paperwork, no authorization, just a phone call from someone claiming to be HOA enforcement. That someone was Karen. I took photos of everything, every scratch, every dent, every bent piece of metal. The police documented it as evidence. Standing there staring at the damage, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't about property anymore. This was personal now, and Karen had no idea what she'd just unleashed. I stopped reacting and started documenting. Every scratch went into a ledger with timestamps, invoices, and sworn statements from mechanics. Every bent rim got inspected by independent shops who confirmed the damage was from improper towing. A contractor confirmed my garage door had been forced open. The lock mechanism was destroyed. The frame was bent. He estimated $3,500 in repairs. I kept every receipt, every estimate, every email. The security footage spoke plainly. Karen directing the tow trucks, Karen forcing entry into my garage, Karen's voice ordering my property removed. There was no ambiguity, no room for interpretation. She'd committed multiple crimes on camera. I met with a lawyer, a good one who specialized in property law and civil rights violations. She reviewed everything I had and smiled. "This is the most documented case of HOA abuse I've ever seen," she said. "We're not just going to win, we're going to make an example." I filed criminal charges and a civil lawsuit the same afternoon, not against the HOA, against Karen personally. Burglary, theft, criminal mischief, abuse of authority, intentional infliction of emotional distress. I attached the bylaws she'd violated, line by line, word for word. I wanted her to read exactly what she'd ignored. The arrest came fast, not dramatic, not cinematic, just procedural and devastating. Karen was booked on multiple felony charges: burglary, criminal mischief, grand theft auto, and abuse of authority. Her mugshot made the local news. HOA president arrested for stealing residents' vehicles. The comments section exploded. Hundreds of people sharing their own HOA horror stories, calling for her resignation, demanding accountability. Karen posted bail within 24 hours, but bail doesn't erase consequences. The HOA board held an emergency meeting and voted unanimously to suspend her pending the outcome of the trial. She showed up anyway. They had to call security to remove her. Meanwhile, my lawyer was building a case that would bury her. We had everything: video evidence, financial records showing she'd used HOA funds to pay for the tow trucks, emails proving premeditation. Karen had documented her own crimes in writing, thinking she was protected by her title. She wasn't. The trial took 6 weeks to start, but only 3 days to finish. Karen's defense tried to frame it as overreach for community benefit. They argued she was acting in good faith to enforce HOA rules. The judge shut that down immediately. Breaking into someone's garage and stealing their property is not community benefit, the judge said. It's a crime. Multiple crimes. The prosecution played the security footage in open court. Karen's voice echoed through the courtroom. "Tow this vehicle out of here. The owner violated HOA policies." The jury watched in silence. Some of them shook their heads. One woman in the back row looked genuinely angry. Karen sat at the defense table, staring at her hands, trying to look small and sympathetic. It didn't work. Witness after witness testified. The tow truck drivers admitted they'd been hired by Karen directly, paid in cash, no paperwork. The impound lot owner confirmed he had no legal authorization to hold my vehicles. My mechanics testified about the damage. The defense had nothing. No witnesses who supported Karen's version. No evidence that contradicted mine. No explanation for why she'd forced entry into my garage. They tried to paint me as vindictive, as someone overreacting to a simple mistake. My lawyer destroyed that argument in closing. This wasn't a mistake, she said. This was calculated, premeditated, documented in emails, and executed with hired help. The defendant didn't make an error in judgment. She committed multiple felonies because she believed her title made her above the law. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they came back, the verdict was unanimous on all counts. Guilty. Karen's face went white. Her lawyer put a hand on her shoulder. She didn't react. I sat in the gallery and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. The judge didn't mince words. Ms. Karen, you abused a position of trust. You violated your neighbor's home. You stole his property. And you did it all while believing you were untouchable. This court takes crimes like this seriously, not because of the financial value of what was taken, but because of what it represents, a complete disregard for the rights and dignity of others. The sentence came down hard. 3 years in state custody for burglary, 2 years for theft, to run consecutively, 1 year for criminal mischief. Total, 6 years. No suspended sentence, no probation option, real time. Karen's lawyer tried to argue for leniency, for house arrest, for community service. The judge denied every request. The defendant had every opportunity to stop, the judge said. She chose escalation. She chose criminality. She will serve her time. Karen was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs. I watched her go and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, just closure. But the sentencing wasn't over. The civil judgment came next, and that's where Karen really paid. Restitution was precise and unforgiving. Karen was ordered to pay the full replacement cost for everything she'd damaged or stolen. Parts, $4,200, labor, $2,800 storage fees from the impound lot, yana $100, garage reconstruction, $3,500 legal fees, $18,000 lost wages from the time I spent dealing with this nightmare, $6,000 to $400 diminished value of the vehicles due to damage, $3,000 emotional distress damages, $25,000 total restitution, $64,000. Every dollar verified by experts. Every cent enforced by court order. Payment plans were denied. The judge wanted it paid in full within 90 days. Karen's assets were frozen. Her house went into foreclosure. Her retirement accounts were drained. Accountability wasn't flexible. On top of the restitution, she was permanently removed from the HOA board, banned from ever holding any HOA leadership position in the state. Every action she'd taken as president was voided and audited. The HOA hired new management, professional, neutral, reasonable. They rescinded every fine Karen had issued during her reign. Neighbors who'd been terrorized for years finally felt safe. Apologies came quietly, some in person, some in writing. People admitted they'd been too afraid to speak up, too worn down to fight. Karen served 4 years before being released on parole. By then, I'd moved, sold the house, started fresh somewhere without an HOA. I still have those 3 cars. I still work on them on weekends, but now I park them wherever I want. The end. Please like and subscribe for more HOA showdowns like this. Do you think Karen got what she deserved? Comment below. And remember, document everything, install cameras, know your rights, because the next time someone tries to steal your property while hiding behind a clipboard and a title, you'll be ready. Justice isn't automatic, but it is possible.